Picard perfection pushback? Yes, Star Trek. Hey, it's episode 305 of Trekland Tuesdays Live, like the sign says. Hey, it's me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and Trekland Treks, bringing you some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. And I hope you're still with us. Hope you're with us back here for another Tuesday. So there it is. There it sits, the entire season of Picard. And people boiled over, bubbled over, talked about it. I know we've been talking about it every week here. I especially have been talking about it on my Second Opinion series, which started a few months ago. Hope you've been watching that over on YouTube only. It's not live, but it's there on Second Opinion Saturdays. Follow the hashtag. But Picard is out, and folks have weighed in. And it's been interesting to watch week to week. And here's the thing. Even on Trekland Tuesdays Live, but on Second Opinion especially, the mailbag has been pretty much what I expected to be, 95% positive. And I don't care. It is what it is. It's been that way through all of modern Star Trek. And in case you hadn't noticed, it's been that way through all of Star Trek. Because fans tend to have opinions. And yes, we are settling. We are settling. The big oomph is over. It's like everything immediately pivoted from Star Trek Season 3. Can it really be this good? I'm so skeptical. It can't. It starts off like gangbusters, but it's going to drop in the middle. Okay, well, no, they're not going to stick the land. Whatever it was, most of fandom seemed to be pretty happy. And again, allowing for criticisms along the way. And that's what I was curious about this time. Now, all 10 episodes are out. People are still reeling. So much of the focus has already, pivoted quickly to hashtag Star Trek Legacy. And come on, Paramount Plus, whoever the powers that be. It's not Alex Kurtzman. He's a done deal sold soldier. It's all the upstairs bean counters and decision makers, suits, execs. They're going to make this decision. And it's being made in a decision that's an evolving stew of what streaming is. And right in the middle of the first big retrenchment, right, on streaming. We've already seen Discovery get cut back from at least 6 seasons back to ending on a slightly extended 5th. So it's a brave new world out there. Section 31 is coming in as a movie. That's as much a practicality as it is anything about money. And it's as much about Michelle Yeoh's schedule as it is about money. But that opens up a slot for it. Will Legacy take the slot that Section 31 might have been? We'll see. Because Strange New Worlds is here, and Starfleet Academy is announced as the other long-delayed announced series that's happening. And where does that leave for Star Trek Legacy? Well, that'll be a big debate, and I hope it doesn't get so pitched that we have factions versus each other. And I sure don't want this to turn into a behind the scenes. I've talked about this already, that hashtag Terry Trek might be just a little too personal. Hashtag Star Trek Legacy is a thing. And the last thing we want is some kind of West Coast, East Coast rivalry over it, or some kind of too popular an uprising. And we sure don't want fans to get mad and take their toys home if they don't get Legacy within 6 months. Because it just, the way the lay of the land, it just might not happen. People... If there have been Section 31 backers, and if there have been Starfleet Academy backers, they've been waiting for 3 and 4 years. Now, I know there's a popular sentiment about what is the Star Trek we want right now? Is that a little tone deaf and read the room? And, hey, you responded to the wave that sprung up for Anson Mount and what became in Pike and what became Star Trek New Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Star Trek New Discovery. Yeah, SNW felt like it became a tsunami of fan demand that was in a different landscape. A whole 4 or 5 years ago, that was one show going and everything else in process. And that's where the 2 S's got delayed. Starfleet Academy and Section 31, especially Section 31, got pushed to the side for it to come. Well, things are in work now. We've come a long way in those 3, 4, 5 years. And it ain't the pandemic anymore. Having said that, I've been curious all along to read the criticisms. And I don't mean the troll folk, I mean the legit criticisms. And we talked about, I think the biggest one coming along is there a there, aside from the nostalgia, which is totally legit. Nostalgia as a base to fuel more character stories, not as an excuse. So I think it's perfectly legit. Just because characters existed 30 years ago is no reason not to check in on them now. We're not going back and trying to recast new actors to play these characters and rerun The Naked Now or Farpoint or Shades of Grey. No, this is these characters where they are in their life, just as the original series folks got their movies. The next gen movies weren't near that far along. They were still pretty much a continuation. Now, this is after the big gap in catching up with people, but also making it relevant. And yeah, bringing in new characters. And whether or not your ulterior motive was to have a spinoff with newer characters and a mix of some, or it was just to legitimately tell a story right now. And I think it works on both ways. There's a mix of the new. Your heart goes in to Sidney LaForge. Your heart goes over with the continuing stories of a new character, Raffi, right, with Seven. Okay. And then Jack Crusher comes out of nowhere and is compelling, and Jack Spiller's Ed Spiller's unknown brother, we all know. No, I'm just saying, if this was an end-all be-all, it would have been fantastic. If it's a setup, that's fine. But I don't think the nostalgia criticism holds up. Now, what's been interesting is what beyond that. And as we've seen before, the week to week crisis of the moment, controversy of the week can sometimes be totally explained in a week or two. And that's the downside of the week to week, although that is certainly what gins viewers and ratings and buzz and average demand expressions that Parrot measures. So it's a curiosity. I've always, you know me, I always look against the grain. I always look at the underdog. I always want to look at outside not the same old. Just for content and texture, not because I am a beginner and an obstinatist. But it's instructive to know that. Especially when the stampede was so favorable. And yay, that's a good barometer. But still, and separating out the troll reaction. So I went to, and I remembered some of this week to week in Twitter, in Facebook, although I think Twitter is the better place. Facebook is it's a great meeting place, but I don't know how much pushback we always have. It depends on the character. It depends on the channel. It depends on the page and the content of the audience and all of that. And I'm not talking about the troll factor and the spam factor. I'm talking about legit discussion. Twitter can be a little hot-headed, but it's still where people don't think twice about jumping in for a second and jumping out. No big tangent, no big investment in time. But what's been interesting, and Instagram is still on the pretty side. So it's still occasionally we'll get into a thread on Instagram, but it tends to be Twitter and Facebook. Now, what's happened with me being so late to YouTube, and hello, YouTubers, please like and subscribe. We're bearing down on 2,000 viewers. But really, something I've never had in my online experience here, the YouTube comment thread is starting to take off. And that's actually where some of the interesting discussion has been. And it's folks, at least folks with their handles, that I don't know. It's not people that I've known from existing Trekland orbit or I've known for 5 or 10 years. And a lot of people are hiding behind handles, and that's fine as long as they're legit. And I've had some of that. So I don't know. I want to talk about this. Please, let's talk about, I said, when the dust settles, when the rosy glow of the shocks of the new and smiling have passed from the scene in our immediate experience of Picard, when I say, what are we going to think in 5 or 10 or 20 years? What are we going to think in a month? And I will say that I just started. I'm going to be talking about the season as a whole on Second Opinion. I'm also going to be talking about it here on a couple of podcasts coming up with old friends who, for some reason, keep having me on to help with them. So yeah, Matt at Trek Zone, Chris and I are going to do one for the original Ready Room over on Trek FM, and probably others to come along. But looking at the season as a whole, and part of it, aside from just looking at it not as as individual pancakes, but as a tall stack, is just not so much the stack of episodes as one, but also the distance in our rearview mirror and what we're thinking about it now. And it's still very early, but sometimes even the simple rewatch. And as I just tweeted, my better half and I, the professional assistant script coordinator, and I are going to do our rewatch. And we've gotten through, it's only one a night. We don't binge, or she doesn't binge. So it's one a night to really let it percolate, but we're going to do it in a row. And we're 2 down, so we're moving there. So that's something else to think about. And again, outside views. And she is not muddled by the eddies and flows of social media. She's seeing it all pretty much spoiler-free, which is the way Janet always preferred to see everything. What a difference our household always was. So I'm looking through the YouTube comments, particularly. And I went back week to week, even though sometimes, the week-to-week revelations fade as information becomes available. But it's interesting to go back and look at the strata of comments, free of what's come since. And to look at some of the reactions in the flesh, since so few of them were outrageously outraged. And it was pretty legit. Now, I go back to the week where basically Jack I had one person say, or some people say, where they were disappointed with the whole Changeling Borg interaction, and that the Changelings were involved with the Borg. Ultimately, the Borg connection, there were so many theories floating around. A lot of people got it. A lot of the red material that I talked about has been a thing in 12 Monkeys that Terry worked on, and that's influenced a lot. There are a lot of little 12 Monkeys Easter eggs, including the casting, including a lot of people behind the scenes, starting with Todd Stashwick. And I said, if you haven't seen the last SO, the last Second Opinion, I said in the penultimate one, the revelation that the red door was just the Borg felt like a little bit of a letdown, and it didn't ruin my week, but it was like, okay. And the fact that so many people were predicting it meant that it wasn't the most obtuse story point. I think the Changelings came out of the blue for people. It did when I was watching my screeners at first, and I think that was a surprise and delight. And what's funny is that set up the whole Paul Wraith's red herring, which had nothing to do, it's another red, but it had nothing to do with anything they were putting out. It was where everybody went after the Changelings and the red eyes. And what came around in the end was the Borg, as much as Janeway dabbled with them too, because Voyager is going across their home turf, how could it not? But as a personal story, you go back to almost the origin. It's amazing that it took 3 seasons to get to Locutus, but 2 seasons in with Q-Who, and the Borg becoming, and the desire to have a big bad being there since the beginning. It wasn't just because the Ferengi didn't pan out, but it was the desire to really step it up on what little budget they could do in 87 and 88 and 89. So I saw people disappointed that, but almost it feels like a lot of that disappointment went away with the last episode. So I saw the meanderings of that, the crumbs of that. People, oh, okay, we get it. Oh, okay, this wasn't just Borg for Borg's sake. It became very organic and tied in a masterful, interesting way. Very organic, that made sense. So a lot of the Borg disappointment, I think, went away. I had one long dissertation one week, very sincere, who really thought that Star Trek, that Picard season betrayed what Star Trek usually does, science fiction allegories and how they affect people, right? Even saying the great episodes even had no villains, but they had ideas. And being a little tough here, this one writer, lots of technobabble, some character development, but seems independent of a very convoluted action plot regarding DNA of Borg coming together with changelings and transmitters. As if the Borg couldn't make their own babies and get the DNA, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think the point is that they were hanging by a thread. I think initially part of that, the Borg again, that's not the Borg again. Walking through an empty cube and seeing all the grotesquely disfigured drones that are starting to decay, and then finally realizing, spoilers, that the entire Borg collective is down to one Borg queen barely hanging on, and she did what she could. She's, if this was a Starfleet hero show, it would be cheering our hero coming back from the brink of extinction. Only we flipped this, but now we're watching it as the villain, the adversary coming back. And it wasn't a cheap, it's a time travel. It was really pretty organic in the idea that she'd been hanging in for 20, 30 years, and this is all that's left of the mighty Borg collective. And even jumping into the fact that 20 years earlier in Star Trek timeline, did the Prodigy kids switch on the collective accidentally once again? Did they provide a spark from a distant cube that helped to reanimate the Queen and restart this? That's going to be interesting. Haven't really seen that popping up much in mainstream talk, but putting that aside for a minute, this writer was really decrying if it was supposed to be TNG nostalgia. Why weren't they on the bridge? Why didn't we get everybody all at once? We could talk about trauma. Why do we have to have Ro and Picard talk about 30 years ago? Why don't we see something? Well, that's where they are. You don't pick up people as characters for real life and just expect them to suddenly repeat. I mean, the 30 years ago happened. It wasn't just nostalgia in a TV show. If you're going to treat these characters as real as they feel to an audience, you don't have to go back and have them talk about, well, they don't fill in for the last 20 years. You don't do that in real life. When you see somebody, you do, especially somebody who you left on not a good keel and you're thrown into a situation together. If you went back to a class reunion and you were in a skyscraper or in a car that skids off the ice and you're trapped with a car full of people, and one of the people in the car wasn't exactly your best friend at all from your high school, and you're stuck in an elevator or on the top floor of a fire, or bring that home. If you don't have death staring you in the face or an existential threat of some kind, you might be able to sit around and shoot the member berries and have fun. But if it's in your face, so there is always a clash between the needs of drama and moving it along and character catch up. But I thought that was expertly done. I think the main criticism about the Ro was people didn't want to see her killed off. And as if you know now, spoilers for interviews, not the screen talk, it was never the plan to totally, completely kill off Ro or even to kill off Shaw. Shaw has a backdoor plan. So as much as people want to cling onto their characters and not have anybody suffer death as a real staple for drama, having everybody get off easy, there were backdoor, that would have involved Kira helping rescue Ro. She could have beamed off the shuttle at the last second. I mean, as a famous dead Vulcan once said, there are always possibilities. So it's so much fun to think about that was in the mix. And I look forward to having my own sit down with Terry coming up. But again, this is a criticism from the end of the season. Someone who thought, same thing with Data and Lore, saying Data and Lore all gets its drama from Brothers. Can't Metalis hire a writer to give me an episode that anyone is interested on its own? Again, I thank God we watched Star Trek. We never got nostalgia. Really? There was never any, and I'm not just talking about Trials and Tribs or Relics with Scotty, or there was nostalgia. We have Daystrom Institute referred to all the time. Things go back to, by the 5th and 6th season, we're getting people's family members beyond Lore. We're getting Geordi's family. We've got Loaxana Troy all the way through to remind us of a familial. So I don't know how you define nostalgia, but having family members visit would be one way. I don't. The people that created the show wanted to have you something that stood by itself. Well, yeah, outside, but within a year, we were getting Klingons and Romulans and Vulcans again. Sometimes I'm interested in people's blinders. It's totally fine to have this. This would have been the starter for a discussion, not a shutdown. Someone, honestly, that's their reaction. And it's a legitimate reaction, and it's very civilly and respectfully put. But to me, it's the kernel for the start of a discussion then, because I can instantly see what I would respond to in this case. And then, talking about characters that are inconsistently designed or inconsistencies with prior Trek or huge plot holes. Since he didn't get into that, he just wants the big picture and how terrible it is. If nothing else, I've watched modern Trek unfurl since 2017. You could even say the Kelvin movies in 2009. And aside from the fact that every new Star Trek gets greeted with a wave of we don't like it, including TNG, and DS9 that didn't go anywhere, and Voyager that instantly went vanilla, and Enterprise that was a prequel and didn't go forward, you can legitimately critique all the series, but some of those early reactions I think, have dissipated, especially over the years. What we think about it in 20 years. Well, we're there with Enterprise now. And Enterprise's shortcomings and thinness in places are still there for me. But the weight of what it was doing, I think, is theirs. And a lot of people do like the song now. So anyway, I would have liked to have talked to this person a little more. Here's somebody else. I had a very adamant writer one week, late in the game, after Deanna came in and said Troy would never have been taken by those changeling kidnappers. She would have sensed that it wasn't Riker immediately, or any human for that matter, even if Troy had never had a personal encounter with changelings and the vacuousness. Now, maybe the scent is off and she could feel something, not a vacuum. And there was confusion about whether she slept with the Riker or not. I know we talk about that on SO, but someone upset that after all her years in Starfleet and living on Nepenthe and even talking about having Gorn raiders at one point, that she wouldn't have had a phaser nearby for protection, especially with Will gone. And if Kestra really was off in an academy prep class somewhere, if she was in an advanced placement, which is what, not on screen, but Terry has said that's where Kestra is, in reaction to all the people that said, where's Kestra? And why can't we even talk about her? Which, again, was a regret they had about not having more inclusion there. But talking about that she never would have gone with that. That never would have happened. To which my reply is, well, if she sensed that she really was, there was a changeling infiltrating her, trying to pass himself off as Riker, as her husband, and she knew it, then she's not going to shut it down. She's going to follow the trail. Be warned and know what she's getting into, but she's got nothing else to lose. She's had her life and her career pretty much, but she wants to know, and she's sure not going to end the trail without giving herself a thread. She was disappointed that Jack got all the attention. Nothing for the LaForge or the other new characters to be developed with. Well, they did get lots of development, but it was a Jack story. It was a Beverly Picard Jack story. He was the lead of the guest stars. He was the lead of the new characters. That's just dramatic structure. And the LaForges indeed got a lot of attention as it wore on, and especially Sydney, who was the older, who was front and center. No, I thought a lot of this was, it ebbed and flowed for sure. And there are a lot of people upset that even Raffi and Worf didn't get all the attention they might have had. Although Raffi and Worf early on have a whole thread to themselves for several episodes. So there is that. And, it just gets crowded. The pool gets crowded when more and more people dive in. So by the time you get to the end of the season, are you going to sympathize with the people who didn't get as much continuing screen time, or the folks who are only getting to the pool party in the last 2 or 3 episodes? Looking at you, Marina. So, I mean, that's just a balance. That's just the way it was. The best thing was that our earlier writer expected, as I say on Second Opinion, expected a class reunion right out of the gate. Well, that would have been the most inorganic, the most artificial bracketing, unless they were literally at a reunion, maybe. And at the time, this came out in the penultimate show, so I would love to go back and revisit this. This writer, she was saying that she wished Troy could get redeemed for the whole mess over generations and all those memes about crashing the ship with her at the helm. I think you got your wish, as I talked about. And she really wished she could see Troy do some counseling. Well, I thought she did some counseling in Nepenthe, but she legitimately does some counseling by the end of Picard in the counselor's office, as I noted on Second Opinion too. So, and do something equal to Crusher shooting the Borg. Well, she got her chance. In fact, she might have saved the whole damn season, or saved everybody's necks at the end of the whole damn season, if we're talking about the Imzadi moment there. Had another writer, so I'm curious what that person is thinking now. Another writer said, all it's doing is, I'm cleaning up the language and the bad grammar here, all it's doing is feeding into the normies concept that all fanboys want is references and retelling a lot of old stories and scenes that are from far better original material. Well, I don't know about you, but I saw some amazing stuff. The aforementioned changeling involvement, Borgs and changeling hooking up, the big bad shifting all through, reveals, peeling away the skin of an onion to find, it's not one long bad all the way through for 10 episodes, which I think has been the flaw in some of the other series trying to tackle this, including Picard. Okay, Discovery and Picard, depending too much on a single big bag through the season, I thought got thin. Or maybe it would have worked for a shorter arc, but wore out or was disappointing by the time you finally got to it with that kind of buildup. And this was more like a wandering maze than climbing a mountaintop for peak surprise. Thought it was structurally handled very well. And there's tons of original material in here. Shaw figuring out what happened to the book. Janeway really did knock the collective. Not a region of the collective, apparently the whole thing. Because they've got the capacity to, their nodes all over the Delta Quadrant, the vast Delta Quadrant, fourth of the galaxy, and they really were pretty much shut down. If they had, in 30 years, they would have come to the aid of each other and been rebuilding more, and apparently that didn't happen. But tons of original material. Just putting the ship and the tech through its paces. Don't tell me having Data joyride, joy chase, do a French Connection chase with the ship itself, and then that final swoop at the end wasn't something we had never seen before. And yeah, some of it's allowed by the tech, but still, the definition of not having seen it before is not having seen it before. And some of the moments and tweaking Data and what that allowed, just using everyone's age and what that allowed, and the poker game, what that allowed. I mean, just where these, again, it's not nostalgia member berries if you're taking people and accounting for 20 years. We're not chasing these people around, putting them through paces where we're trying to pretend they're all 30 and 40 still, or 20. It's very much a sore. I love watching the early episodes where Riker's talking about his sore knees and your bad, whatever, acknowledging that. It's just as on the nose and in your face and a little different as watching Kirk pull out the glasses to wear them on the bridge in the original series movies. Someone took issue with me saying, just highlighting the varnish on the Wrath of Khan soft reboot. Somebody who said, no, there were no dangling character arcs. I think the Crusher Picard folks would dare to disagree, and the Troy Riker folks would dare to disagree. So the show ended, TNG. There's nothing wrong with that. Picard Season 3 is just more heaping helpings of member berries to make people think they're watching a new season of a long-defunct series. Is it any better than seasons 10 or 11 of X-Files? Or that horrendous Lost in Space reboot? Capitalizing on brand names instead of taking a risk on new storytelling from fresh writers. Well, there's tons of fresh writers in that writer's room. I think, and this was not a troll. This was not a bot. There are bits and pieces here. I think it's just someone I don't know personally. It would be very easy for me to say it's just a grumpy old person who apparently doesn't like any sci-fi now, or they're very much into their very thin band. And you know what? That's okay. And they said their opinion, and that's okay. But I talk about this mailbag of who really still had an issue that was legitimately and civilly presented. Because after 5 or 6 or 7 episodes, I could see where this was going. It was just going to be a really big triumph, and maybe the biggest triumph of the whole post-Kelvin universe timeline. I don't mean timeline specific. I mean era of production. The secret hideout era, and that's fine. And even as joyously received as Strange New Worlds is, the last thing I want to see is some kind of a competition between, because Discovery is on its retirement lag. I don't know if everybody's going to ease up on Discovery, which has improved itself every year. And I've heard that this last season is going to be the most Star Trek-ish of all, that it won't hang on a big bad. It's going to be a big chase for a puzzle, not so much a villain to defeat, and that would be welcome. So I don't know if the criticism is going to ease up on Discovery and everyone's going to focus on what's at hand, the Picard that everybody just saw and that they're wanting more of through Legacy, or the Strange New World that everybody fell in love with. And I say that people I know, including me, have some criticism for Star Trek, for Strange New Worlds. And I'm saying Strange New Worlds, not even saying Strange New. Show respect. One last person that I caught separately said that there were some nice bits in the last episode of Picard in the mailbag here, and some absolute horseshit. The writer cannot write. He also goes and undermines his entire writing in season 2. Terry, you can do better. Of all people in a Twitter thread, Jerry Ryan popped in to say, Terry didn't write season 2. He was there at the beginning and then went off when they decided to do the seasons back to back. He's in the credits. He was vitally involved in the setup and in writing episode 1 and 2, which, as somebody earlier said, may have been your favorite parts of the season, but wasn't actively, he saw them and made comments, but he wasn't actively involved because he sat down at that point to start writing because they were going to be shooting back to, and they needed scripts done and to be able to plan and budget for what was needed. So our persons continued to say, if you undo everything in season 2 as the writer of season 3, there are issues even. Seven's romance, gone. Q being brought back after his superb exit, gone. Complete disregard to the finale scene in season. So the Q death was actually something that people brought up until you remember that Q died, but the fact that he's bopping around in time means his pre-death Q-ness can pop up at any time, and that's what, and knowing premonitions, that's what the real Q is. We did have kind of the best one of all with some of the legs longest lasting, and I think it's been not so much about the future of the franchise, but there was one more. And did you get in on this? I actually kind of touched base on this one a little bit because I was wondering as the episode wound down, it dawned on me, just like the tax guy famous in California, who's a cameo in Airplane, and you go through the whole movie and he's back in the taxi, going to give the guy 5 more minutes. What of Laris? I said. Is Laris still back on Earth at the vineyard in Labar waiting, or did she got on to Chaltalk 4 without him? Or she did move on, and she's just there by herself. Does Picard wind up with Laris, or actually wind up with Beverly, with Crusher? And by wind up, do they get remarried? Do they just stay together in touch for the sake of Jack? A future series would tell us the definite answers, but what was the intention? What was the intention? And Terry has just had an interview where he says, well, we kind of left it up to you, which I think infuriated some fans. No, we want an answer. Because we got the Crusher folk over here, and we've actually got a Laris contingent over here, and just some folks that were just saying, "Oh, come on, just tell us. I don't care which way it lands, just tell us." There was a lovely bit, like a living postcard from Laris to Picard, and she says "cheeky fecker," which made me laugh. And of all of the thoughts about this that came from the mailbag, I think that's, I could say legitimate, but that's one that I can see landing with people. As many years as people waited to see Beverly and Picard's outcome one way or the other, and now have it filtered through the fact that they've got this adult son who's interesting and problematic, who's running around with Borg bits and has these abilities. To the Laris faction, which is not nearly as long-lived and large, but it's a tribute to Orla Brady and her acting and the warmth. And season 1, Orla Brady and Laris was my favorite new creation for Picard season 1 out of the gate. And I love the cast overall. And obviously, Michelle Hurd and Raffi have gone on. And yeah, everybody. I enjoyed all the characters. But the thing that kind of popped up that I didn't expect, and I think the surprise of the season was Laris. And I don't think anybody sitting down to start writing the beginning of season 1 Picard had any idea that Laris would be among those brought back, which is why I think they killed off her husband, Shaban. I think he was killed off because they loved her and hadn't planned on inserting her into the plot, and then found a way to do so because Orla Brady made such an impact and a presence. So good on her. And I think this ultimate, who does Picard wind up with, is a debate we're even having at all because of the impact Orla Brady had. The last thing I want to say is that the reaction is obviously that the world fell in love with it. There's a change.org petition for greenlighting hashtag Strange New Worlds, for hashtagging Star Trek Legacy, I should say. So there's all of that, and it's obvious. It's obvious by any rational witness that the world loved this season of Picard more so than any other. We've even got, whether you want to, question the specifics of the math and the metrics, even the Nielsen's that are trying to measure streaming came out and said it's the first Star Trek to bump into their radar. It's obviously that we'll see in a minute. It's the biggest thing as measured for parrots, and even globally. Picard even is better globally than it is in the States. And it's a hit here. So even the math metrics that we do tentatively have say what we're all getting, and over a sustained time, not just for the premiere and then the new wears off, but all the way through and growing with trend lines that go up. So you can't argue with that. Something in this dang show appealed to people, appealed to fans, and apparently reaching a broader audience, and appealed to that audience like no current Star Trek has so far. And not that it's a contest, but we're just recording history here. So I'm more doubled down on people who have critical issues with the season, and whether any of this will look like in 5 and 10 years, in 20 years, because it's just cool. In the meantime, I'm thrilled that we haven't had the insane, even the F word bomb this year was almost like there was a little bit of an uproar over it, and it came from Patrick himself. And then to find out that it wasn't even scripted, that it was organic on set, and there was a big debate about which way to go with it. And Terry, and I'm sure a few stairs upwards from him, decided to go with it. Even that seemed to dissipate within a week or so. And, it helped that it was Sir Patrick. It was Picard, not some guest admiral. And it was Sir Patrick himself. And it was Sir Patrick himself who originated, out of the actor's well. I hadn't even thought about that until just now. I didn't even include that here. I didn't say anything F-bomby in the mailbag week to week. But even that was out there and went away. So we may just be, like it or not, confronted with the fact that this may have been the best season of modern short season streaming Trek so far, which of course lends weight to the why don't we have more of it then? Why is this so hard? But I would remind you that most people would say the 4th season of Enterprise was the best season of that series, maybe after the initial episodes got it set up and going. And that was all about what was in motion, the writing on the wall, the economics of the time. So, it's not always just about what you see on film. There is a big superstructure going on out here that has to be answered to. And that's what's going on with Star Trek Legacy. But as for what we saw on camera, there you go. There you go. And if anybody were with us now, live or later, and if you're watching later, I'll say right now, please drop a comment in and keep it going here on YouTube. If you've got something bugs you about the series, even if it's like a 5% and 95% you loved it, that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. We're always ascribing to be perfect. It's more than the Borg. We're trying to aspire to perfection, or Soong-type androids, or what have you. All right. That's going to do it for now if you're watching us later. But I do want to say, of course, a big shout out to, I mentioned them earlier, our TTL Club, our Patreons, Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Galinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Pranakasha Productions, Ryan, Andrew Jasemski. This is through the end of the month that we're about to wind up. And our live wires, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Hebrid Gunn Johnson, Alan Hoenzi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shafsky. Hey, it's the end of the month. I want to thank them. If you want to jump in and help us out, it's very simple. It's $5 or $10. I keep it simple at patreon.com/Trekland Live, although it helps all our streaming efforts. Our $5 folk, our TTLers get the shout out, and the live wires get access to our earlier generation Portal 47 cast interviews. And I don't mean earlier generation like they're on kinescopes. I mean, it's just the first 2, 3, 4 years of Portal 47's guest lineup behind the scenes. Those, I don't have them up. They've disappeared. They've run off. But the guest folks that we had, and we're finally where we can share it easier. So thanks to all of them. Hey, also reminding you that this week, the Trek Files is back up. We're in the middle of season 10. We've got a fun one this week where my producer, and you know him as the Mission Log host, John Champion, take a look at some of Bob Justman's attempt to ghost blue sky when we're going to do, for the first time ever, think what a new Star Trek would look like. and how far afield, how smart, or how wacky did some of Bob Justman's ideas turn out to be when he and Gene and the little think tank of 3 or 4 people were getting started to brainstorm what next generation would look like. It's this week on the Trek Files. Our documents are at our Facebook home. You can find all the Roddenberry podcasts at podcastroddenberry.com. And you can find Trek Files on its own almost anywhere where fine podcasts are caught. The documents, though, and you want to see them, Bob's memos, right out of my stack. They're sitting right here still from where I scanned them, that he printed out for me on his own printer. You can see them at our Facebook page. So do that. And hey, we're getting into summer season. It's finally warming up here. If you're coming to Los Angeles for business or pleasure and want to take your own away mission, if you've even thought of this as a thing, I will lead you on your own Trekland trek. Get in touch with me. We'll do 4 stops in a day that you plan with my help. I will lead you from hotel to hotel, doorstep, pick up to redelivery, after a quick lunch in the middle of the day at California fast food. But you will go and have your own personal away mission. You want to cosplay, you want to drag your props, your stuffed animals, your action figures along. I've done it all for folks, believe me. So get in touch, treklandtreks.com, or once again, you can get the link there at everything at LarryNemecek.com. And hey, I rarely do this, but look, the new edition of Star Trek Explorer is out. I've been a part of the Titan magazine in the UK back when it was the official UK magazine, all the way through to now when it took over when the communicator went out, sadly. Been, what? Oh my goodness. It's been 18 years now. Goodness gracious. I've done a column in this dang thing every year since about 1998. So I'm in there. They have original fiction now. It's retitled Explorer. This is the 6th edition since the reboot. If you haven't given it a shot, check it out. But yeah, Fistful of Data is still in here. And the archival piece and cannon fodder are all my parts. Again, it's a big focus on Picard now. There's several covers. The subscribers get choice. The newsstand has a choice. But it's actual Dead Tree Media still thriving with fiction as well as the nonfiction and interviews. And I am still very, very proud to be a part of now Star Trek Explorer. And of course, you can get back issues too. It's out now. And the only other thing out is me, if you're watching later on. Just as a reminder out the door that you can catch me on Twitter at Larry Nemecek and Mastodon. Larry Nemecek's Trekland, that's actually Facebook where you are now. But Instagram is a lot of fun. But YouTube, we're finally growing the YouTube channel. So even if you don't go there often, please go over and like and subscribe. You can ring the bell and be aware. All right. I thank everybody for doing that. Even if you're not a YouTube watcher, please jump on the bandwagon and like and subscribe. We're starting to hit some critical mass there. Hey, everybody. That's going to do it if you're watching later on. If you're live, stick around. And yeah, what do I always say? Just, take care of yourself. Stay healthy. Do all the things. Pandemic or not, stay woke. A lot of weird shit out there. Just check your sources. Maybe it's something that's true and you never knew it. And trek well, everybody.